welcome to another episode of Toy Talks Wrestling. And as you can see from the title, yes, we're going to be talking about the Mr. McMahon documentary series on Netflix. There is about 6 episodes. We're going to go back. We're just going to break each episode into 3 parts. So it's going to be, we'll talk about 1 and 2 today, Thursday, and then 3 and 4 on Friday, and then 5 and 6 on Saturday. I'm not really going to talk about it. I'm more going to give more of my opinions on it. I'm going to give you some little bit of highlights and everything else, so you can go out and check it out for yourself if you have Netflix, if you want to. But the first episode of the Mr. McMahon documentary series is called Junior. Basically, it's about Vince meeting his father and the whole relationship with his dad. He didn't meet his father until he was like 12 years old. They didn't really explain why, what happened, like why was he not in, why Vince McMahon's dad was not in his life in the first 12 years of his life, because Vince didn't know and his dad never told him, but he met him at like 12. His Vince McMahon's stepdad, the one that was married to his mom, just beat the crap out of him like almost every day, and he was like, you just take it until you just leave, right? So they talk about that. They talk about how Vince McMahon wanted to work for his dad, because his dad owned the wrestling company and everything else. Talked about how he started working with him, doing some stuff and everything else. They talk about also how Vince McMahon became an announcer for the wrestling there was another announcer who wanted more money from Vince's dad, and Vince's dad was thinking about it, and then he just told his son, it's like, hey Vince, you do the announcing, and Vince did the announcing, and it was horrible. It was really bad. Vince as an announcer was just terrible. Let's just be fair. I remember hearing that before, and I'm just like, sheesh, this is something I could probably do a little bit better, but not really. So this was just bad. But he had character, and that's why people liked him as an announcer, because he had character. But as an announcer, as was telling the story, what's going on in the ring, no. He eventually wanted to buy the business from his dad. Gave him some kind of an offer, where it's it was so good of an offer you couldn't refuse. He also Vince McMahon also had competition, because other people wanted to buy the business that his dad was willing to sell to, but then the dad said, you know what, I'll sell it to my son. So Vince McMahon gets the business. He buys the business off his dad, and he starts changing things up. Vince McMahon's dad was more for wrestling, so this was just wrestling. Vince McMahon was going for somewhat of entertainment and making it a soap opera with violence or something like that. It was Vince McMahon's dad was people can just come and enjoy a good wrestling match. Vince McMahon was I want people to enjoy wrestling as a story, as oh my goodness gracious, look at these characters in this ring. So it was different. Some of these wrestlers weren't for it, some of they were, so it kind of depends. Some wrestlers just wanted to wrestle. They didn't want to do storylines and make it into characters and anything like that. They were just doing their job as wrestling, and some of them thought, oh, it's a good idea. So in the wrestling business during this time, there was territories. There was other wrestling companies, and each wrestling company had their own territory. One's in Atlanta or in LA or New York or whatever, and you never crossed the line. But Vince was fuck it, I'm crossing lines here. I'm going into people's territories, and I'm going to go and I'm bringing the WWF towards these territories. And some of these other wrestling companies didn't like it, obviously, because you're crossing the line. right? And Vince McMahon's dad didn't appreciate that. It's like, no, you have to stay in this area. This is our area. Vince is like, no, well, this is my company now. I'm gonna do what the fuck I want, basically. So that's what he did. He would go into other territories and then get and then when he goes there, he would get the main stars from those other companies, and they would come and they would go on to to the WWF, now WWE, but at the time it was called WWF. They would go on to these shows and they would bring out their big stars and put them on Vince McMahon's wrestling company. So it was kind of a good thing that he did all this at some point. But still, it was kind of his dad didn't approve. I think also his dad was kind of feeling some sort of a way or something like that, because at one point dad was working for his son, and how Vince described his dad wasn't very well, I'm not the type of person that is used to being underneath somebody or anything else, and he wasn't a very person that was this very strong-holded guy, I guess you could say. So after a while, Vince has become very successful with this whole sports entertainment wrestling thing, going into different territories, that his dad was like, you know what, fuck all these other companies, you keep doing what you're doing, very proud of you. This is the first time that I guess he showed Vince that he was proud of him, and that how he loved his work ethics and stuff like that. He's never said it before, so I guess that meant a lot to Vince. At one point, Vince McMahon's dad finally tells him, that he loves him, and I think he died the very next day. So he got that I love you from his dad, which obviously meant a lot, because I think, and I don't know nowadays, but back in the day, I see how my dad used to treat his daughters versus his sons, right? And I think a lot of guys, a lot of dads wouldn't tell their sons, oh, I love you. It was more I'm gonna show you how much I love you. Here, let's go play baseball. Here, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Whatever, They don't really say the words. It's just I work for you to have all these things. That is how a father would show his son love. At least that's how it was in my house. With me and my dad and my other sisters, it's he'd be like, oh, I love you, baby girl, and everything like that, but he would never say I love you to sons. Maybe once in a while he will say it, but it was not as often as he would say it to the females. And I think that is just how it was back in them days. It's now it's oh man, I love my son, I love my daughter, what I'm saying? It's love fest all over around, right? I don't know if it was right, I don't know if it was wrong, it's just how things were back then. So it kind of just made sense to me. But yeah, his dad died. It was really heartbreaking for Vince. So another thing they talked about on the episode 1, they talked about Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was working for Vince McMahon's dad at the time, and basically was offered a role on Rocky 3, I believe. And Vince McMahon's dad was like, you go on this road because you're not an entertainer, you're not an actor, you're a wrestler. You go here, you're fired. Hulk Hogan was like, okay, cool. Obviously, if you watch Rocky 3, you know that he did the movie and basically was out of wrestling and was doing this movie and doing some other thing. When Vince McMahon Jr. became in business, he hired Hulk Hogan back. Hulk Hogan was going to be Vince McMahon's golden boy for the WWF and bring all fans in and everything else. So that was going to be the thing. So he brought him back in after Vince McMahon's dad fired him. They also mentioned about when this WWF was going on, they started doing other medias as far as like going on other platforms. Like one of the platforms was MTV. MTV and WrestleMania, MTV and WWE were pretty like close. They had like they brought in like Cyndi Lauper, because Cyndi Lauper used what's his fucking face in her first video, Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, as the dad. I can't remember his name, sorry. And they basically had like a kind of like a little bit of feud thing, and they would bring like some other wrestlers, and like there was Wendy who would represent a wrestler for Cyndi Lauper and stuff like that. And also they would bring like other like celebrities as well, like at some point. So like I guess the business was going well. It was going so well that Linda McMahon told Vince McMahon to go on a vacation. So he went on a vacation, I think to like Jamaica, to Bahamas or something, like for 2 days. When he came back, he basically said, I have an idea. We're gonna start a thing, kind of like the Super Bowl, kind of like the World Series. We're gonna kind of like this, and we're gonna call it WrestleMania. So that's how WrestleMania pretty much came about. When Vince McMahon was supposed to relax and take a vacation. Instead, he was thinking about ideas of how to make his business better, and you have WrestleMania. And I think WrestleMania 1 was in March of, what was it, 1985, I believe? Maybe a year earlier? I don't remember, but I think it was in 85. So also during this time, WWF was settling lawsuits and stuff, because a lot of like there was like at least 2 reporters, or like a reporter and a talk show host was like got injured because they basically was like, oh, wrestling is fake, it's not real, is it? Everything's fake. And they got attacked. One of the guys who, I don't remember the reporter's name, but I think the guy who attacked him was named David Strotz or something like that, and he attacked him. And then the guy from, I don't remember his, something Betzler, he was on Law and Order SVU. I think he played the Jewish guy. That guy, he was on I think he had a talk show, and he had on during this time Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, because Mr. T and Hulk Hogan were going to like fight at WrestleMania 1, not each other, but like at WrestleMania 1 or whatever. And the guy was like, oh, hey, you know, wrestling's fake. And he's like, no, it's not fake. He's like, well, put me in one of those sleeper holes or some kind of a hold and everything else. And he put him in the hole. Hulk Hogan put the guy in the hole, and the guy just passed out. And when he passed out, Hogan let go, and he hit his head. Hogan, at first, he was just playing along, but it turns out that he wasn't playing along, that he was really injured, and he was bleeding from his head and everything else. And so the reporter guy sued WWF, and the Betzler guy sued WWF. But I'm like, I can understand why the reporter would sue, but I don't understand why the other guy, Betzler, would sue, because he was like, he told Hulk Hogan to put him in a move, right? So I'm like, why are you suing? You said, hey, put me in a move. You didn't think this was real, so you said put you in a wrestling move. They did it, and now you're suing. I think that's all settled and everything else. But you know, it's like, I don't know. Like one of them I can understand, but the other one I'm just like, I don't know. That's how episode 1 ended. Just so far, this was a good opener, and it wasn't as deep as you would think it was going to be, and it was kind of like, okay, let's just get the how things started, kind of information thing, right? How everything started, and that's how I pretty much saw this. Was like, this was just a good start. Let's move on to episode 2. Episode 2 was called Heat. And boy, was it some heat. So, they talked about, like, you know, how episode 1 they talked about how successful WrestleMania 1 was. If I forgot to mention that, I'm sorry. But episode 2 they talked about WrestleMania 2 not being as successful as WrestleMania 3, how he wanted to just basically have wrestling at 3 different locations at the same time. Didn't work out as well, and say it was never going to do that again. And then they talked about WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 3 was probably, I guess Vince McMahon said, his best WrestleMania to date. You had Hulk Hogan running wild. Hulk Hogan was really freaking popular back then, and he was he was going to fight I believe Andre the Giant during this time. Andre the Giant pretty much kind of just left the business because of his injuries, dealing with his back and everything else. Vince McMahon basically was like, we're going to get you the back surgery, you're going to get the back surgery, we're going to bring you back in to the WWF, and you're going to wrestle. It was pretty successful WrestleMania. You know, I think Hulk Hogan was worried about whether or not, you know, Andre the Giant was going to let him win, because Hulk Hogan was defending his title, and, you know, Andre the Giant didn't really make it known, because it's like, this is a giant, right? You can't tell Andre the Giant what to do. He's going to F you up, right? So it's like, there's no way. But, you know, it's like, so Hulk Hogan asked Vince McMahon, is he gonna let me win? And he's like, Vince McMahon is like, he's gonna do the right thing. And Hulk Hogan was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what do you mean by that? He's gonna do the right thing. What's the right thing, right? So eventually they had their match. Hulk Hogan was like, I could tell that his back was really bad. So, you know, so he told like Andre, like, hey, just stay near the ropes when you fall. That way you can use the ropes to climb up and everything else. At one point, Andre the Giant told Hulk Hogan, like, slam me on the mat. So, you know, that big old like power slam that we've seen over and over again. You have that. He did it, and power slam. He did the body power slam. Did the leg drop. Hulk Hogan still didn't know whether or not he was winning that night, and until like they counted to 3, and he's like, okay, obviously I'm winning tonight. So we have that going. So after that, you had Hulk Hogan, everything. Hulkamania was running wild and everything else, and there's Hulk Hogan shirts and memorabilia and merchandise and cartoons, and he made a really freaking bad movie. What was it, No Hulk's Bars or something like that? Like, that movie was terrible. That movie was so bad. Like, I kind of want to just watch that movie just for nostalgia, just to like just be like, oh my goodness, if I can stream that movie, do a live stream of that movie just to watch me cringe on live, I totally would, but I don't think it's possible. But yeah, it was Hulkamania was everywhere. It was ridiculous. Also, in episode 2, they talked about the steroids. How there was a doctor that was selling steroids to the talent, to the wrestlers at the time, where it was like prescription, but it was selling. And it was a rumor going around that this was happening and everything else. Eventually, there was a reporter that was trying to, like, you know, report all this stuff about the steroids and all this other stuff and everything else. They also talked about there was like a lot of pedals running around in the WWF. One particularly named Pat Patterson. Now, I'm not calling Pat Patterson a pedal. I'm just saying this was the allegations that were running around during this time with these people. And there was a reporter, I can't remember the reporter's name, but he was like, I don't know if he had like some kind of vendetta against the WWF, Pat, or this Vince McMahon himself. I mean, he was there at the thing. I can't remember this guy's name, but he did call Vince McMahon like a scum. He was a creep or some shit like that. So he could just have this kind of like this vendetta against Vince McMahon. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, there was a lot of talking around there. No one had. They were just talking right now. This was just talk, and just, you know, eventually he had to let Pat Patterson go, right? But he said he didn't let it go. He didn't let him go because of the allegation, but he said he had to let him go because, well, he's like gay, and he didn't want him to get in any trouble because he said, I don't have a problem with Pat being gay, but other people might have a problem with Pat being gay. Eventually, Pat Patterson came back. Like a few months later, he came back. During this time, I guess Vince McMahon was on Phil Donahue, and basically they're talking about all the allegations about the Pat Patterson and the steroids and everything else. Let's just say that show that he was on did not make Vince look good in the best light. Vince thought that he can just be like, I'm gonna go because he likes controversy, and like, I'm just gonna go and do this. It didn't look good on his behalf. Probably wasn't like the best decision to go on that show, but he did. Also, they talked about I guess this probably would be like a first SA assault. There was at one point the first female referee in the WWF, where she said that Vince McMahon made her, do oral sex, and when she didn't do it, he basically like attacked her, ripped off her jeans, and made him like get on top and saying that you want this contracts to be a ref for like $1 million, whatever like that, you're gonna have to satisfy me, and other stuff. And she was talking about this on Gerardo or whatever that freaking star was called, and she was making this allegation towards Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon said that it wasn't like that, it was consensual, and even if it was that way, there's statute of limitations. So who cares? I guess, I don't know. It's like, I don't really know what the hell you're thinking about that sentence right there, but like, so I don't know. Did this happen? Did this not happen? Considering what I've heard nowadays, I could probably believe this happened, but at the time, a lot of people didn't believe this woman. You have a successful man with all this money, and you have like this woman ref, and it's like, you're working for him, you just probably just want more money. It's like, yeah, we don't believe you, lady, like, you're lying. You just want the man's money. They kind of just like, whatever, we don't believe you, pretty much. And I think Vince McMahon, he did a lawsuit against Gerardo and the lady refs for defamation of character. And I'll explain more about that later. Oh, also in '94, Vince McMahon went to court. He got indicted for steroid distributing, I guess, and distributing steroids to the talent. See, at one point in time, it was not against the law to use steroids. It didn't become against the law until like Ray made this law about drugs, and I think it was like number 3 of this list of like drugs, illegal drugs to be used. So at one point it was okay because Vince McMahon said, I used to do it, but I don't do it anymore because it became illegal. So he had to go to court. During this time, when he was he's being a dynast going to court, he had Hulk Hogan on the Arsenio Hall show. He went on the Arsenio Hall show when they asked about like the whole thing about the steroids and everything else. Hulk Hogan lied. He said he only did steroids like 3 times, and that was a lie, because a lot of people were like, oh no, I used to inject the Hulk Hogan with steroids all the time. And Vince McMahon told Hulk Hogan, just come out with the truth, like just say the truth, like just say you use steroids, it's fine, like tell the truth. Didn't tell the truth, kind of made like the WWF look bad, make Hulk Hogan look bad. It wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good look for the company or for the guy, right? For Hulk Hogan. At the time, you got WrestleMania, like what, 6 going on, and at this time, Hulkamania was not running wild anymore. People were like not feeling it. They were booing him. They had signs saying, "Did you take your next shot?" Like, you know, Hulk Hogan wasn't feeling the love that he was feeling. And he was like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to go. Maybe it's time for me to make my exit. He told Vince, he's like, I'm going to leave. I want to terminate the contract. Vince was like kind of sad to see him go, but you know, he terminated the contract. And Vince is like, you're not going to go work for another company, are you? Hulk Hogan was like, no, I'm just going to do this Hollywood thing. Hulk Hogan was doing like about to do a TV show or some shit like that. As all these as the court settings were going, we talk about they talk about WCW. WCW was like number 2 in the wrestling business back in the 90s, like a far too as far as like everything's concerned. But considering that everything was pretty much going down for WWE, at that time, that WCW was kind of like seeing its rise, right? And Eric Bischoff talked about how he knew that Hulk Hogan was no longer working for WWE, and basically just said, hey, you know, I'm gonna take my shot. They were both at like Disney MGM Studios. Hulk Hogan was filming his stuff, and then WCW was filming their stuff, and then Eric Bischoff went to go talk to Hulk Hogan and to say, hey, you know, you want to come work for me? It's like, how many days you like? And the WCW was totally different from WWE, because WWE was 7 days a week. You're working 7 days a week, 52 weeks in a year, whereas WCW was like, oh, you can work like 100 days and get this amount of money, so that way you can stay home with your family, because you know, at this time, Hulk Hogan had like his 2 kids that were really young, and he wanted to be around with his 2 kids, which makes sense, right? So he thought about it, and he went over and he started working for, you know, WCW. And I think one of his first matches with WCW was with Ric Flair. Hulk Hogan, the businessman at the time during this interview, was like, you know, he said he wasn't going to work for any other company. I could honestly legitimately say that I was 100% hurt, which I get it, dude. It's like, you thought this person was like your friend, you let them go because you know you think they're going to be loyal to you and everything else, and you kind of like, and it kind of just like stabs you in the back and just be like, hey, you know, I'm going to go work for this other company, your rival company. It was pretty like kind of like messed up, but yeah. So at the end of this episode, it ended up being Hulk Hogan had to basically testify against Vince McMahon due to the government saying so. Otherwise, the government was like, we're gonna discharge you for a bunch of stuff and everything else. So he had to testify. They didn't get to where he said, because they just got to the part where they're like, okay, Hulk Hogan was like, he got immunity, and he's like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to say now. And they ended up like that. And then they had like some words where it talked about Vince McMahon withdrawing his defamation against the lady referee and the Gerardo, and also talked about, like, in 2023 they had Vince McMahon had settled a case to the lady referee who supposedly was raped by him, but he still denied this to this day. So that's how it ended. Considering both of these episodes, episode 1 was kind of like, it was kind of like a feel good kind of thing. It was like, oh, okay, you got the goodness, I guess, and how everything started. And it's like, okay, but like part 2 was like, god dang, dude, I was just like, sheesh. Like, this is like heat. Yes, definitely heat. Definitely got the heat on this one. But thus so far I liked it. I liked the document. I like how it's going. I like there's a lot of superstars in this, past superstars, past current superstars in here talking. I'm pretty sure we're gonna see more of more different superstars and everything else. I think maybe now we're probably going into, I think 3 or 4 are probably going to the Attitude Era. So we're gonna see what Hulk Hogan said in court against Vince and everything else. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good 2 episodes. I'm going to watch the other 2 episodes after I've done recording this, and I'll have that out for you tomorrow, like I said, on Friday. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys tomorrow in my next video. Okay, bye.